A Swedishman, an Irishman, and possibly, potentially, an Albanian walk into a football club. It's either the start of a very 1970s joke or Ipswich Town's recent transfer dealings. Either way, we're going to have a chat about it. Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us. If you're here live on our last-minute decision to put out a transfer reaction show, thank you for joining us. This is the Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. My name is Craig Fimbo, and here to discuss transfers rather than questionable non-PC jokes is Joe Fairs. How are you, Joe? We've waited a while for these transfers, and then there's been a flurry in the last 5, 6, 7 days, isn't there?
Yeah, we're still waiting a little bit for that last one to get over the line, which we thought was happening today. Fabrizio Romano tweeted it was going to happen before lunchtime.
Assured
us. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what time that's going to happen, but it sounds as though it'll be tomorrow morning now. Stuart Watson at the EADT and Phil Ham at TWTD have reported it'll be tomorrow morning, but we're going to talk about that as though it's done because it sounds to all intents and purposes as though it is. So if we find out tomorrow when you're listening back on podcast that he's pulled out of this, then don't blame us, blame someone else.
Yeah, ignore the last hour and 20 minutes of this pod where Joe will go in very in-depth about an Albanian striker who's recently signed for Southampton. Maybe we'll put the Southampton hashtag on it when he eventually signs for them. But yeah, thank you for joining everyone. I'll stick some hellos up. Please give us a shout if you wish to. Hello to Michael. I won't go about your concerns just yet, but good morning to you from Brisbane. A little bit chillier down in Plymouth for Tim. Bargool, hello to you. Good evening to Colin. It's Craig, not Seb. And good evening to Henry. The reason why we did tonight, actually, Colin, is to not tread on Seb's toes tomorrow night because there's pre-match. It's a Thursday. So we thought we'd put something out this evening on the assumption that people are going to sign, but we can also chat about those that have already. Neil, good evening to you. William, good evening to you. Streaky, good evening to you. So
just quickly, if you can't get enough of Blue Monday, we've got this tonight, the pre-match show Thursday, and on Friday, Rich has recorded an interview with Ipswich women's team's manager Joe Sheehan ahead of their first home league game of the Saturday against #United, where I'm sure they'll discuss the impressive win from Sunday. So we are coming into your ears every day.
And also, we've got the Rewind show from myself and Dave going through a couple of Manchester City games from the annals of history. So, Christ, we really are spoiling, as Joe says, coming in your ears. Should we rewind back to the tail end of last week, Joe, when our long-term target, Sammy Smodic, was pictured with shirt, with scarf, on pitch, etc. Obviously, you were on the Flagship on Sunday when Mr. Benjamin Bloom spent 90% of the show eulogising over Calvin Phillips, or KFP as we're now calling him, and sort of scooted over the fact that we'd signed someone on a permanent deal, which was, according to Darragh McAntony, a quote unquote hell of a deal. He's come out and said today on his own podcast, 9 million quid, which was, Darragh was staggered by the staggered payment plan that we'd managed to put in place. But also extolling the virtues of Sammy Smodic's character, actually. If people want to listen to that pod or read the transcript that I think Stuart Watson's put on the EADT, he goes into quite a lot of depth about the history of Sammy Smodic and, his thoughts on his character, as I say, and his career path, etc. But Joe, what are your thoughts on the signing, strengths, position he'll play, and also his brief appearance that he had at the weekend against Liverpool?
Yeah, that was one I was really excited by. I was really hoped we'd get that one over the line. It's been dragging on for weeks and weeks. I think we first spoke about it probably over a month ago on here, and it's just dragged on, and I think Blackburn had been very difficult to deal with. But then all of a sudden, it just happened really quickly. It was like, it's done now, it's happening. He played I watched him come on for Blackburn against Derby on the opening night of the season, where he came off the bench and scored. He then scored twice for them in the League Cup on the Tuesday night, and now he's here. There's obviously been a lot of talk about his culture, the history, and what he thinks about Ipswich. But I think he's just one of those people that is just a wind-up merchant when he plays against other teams, and he needs that to get him going.
And he covered that in his interview, didn't he? In his Town interview.
And covered it very well as well. And I don't know people how much they follow the players, but on Instagram today, he's got a picture of his children in Ipswich Town kit saying, 2 new supporters here. And so he seems delighted to be here, delighted to be a Premier League footballer, and fully deserving of being one, because he is, like I say, his season he had last year, and he seemed to start it in the same vein this year. It's just been in unbelievable form, and he looks like a really good fit with what we want to do. And with regards to what position, I think it's that left-sided 10 role. We play the sort of 2 10s with Leif Davis as the left winger and Wes Burns as the right winger, and McKenna seems to like people to be playing off their sort of wrong side there, so they come in to shoot. And he is, I don't know, he seems perfect for that. You watch back a lot of his goals, and he's just a really clean striker of the ball, a really clean finisher of the ball. And I think he's going to be really good there. He came off the bench against Liverpool, had a few nice touches, a couple of nice runs, but by that point the game was dead. So it's just a case of him sort of trying to get himself into the team. But I think if he carries on the form and fit and learning and working as hard as he obviously has done for the last few years of his career, I don't think it'll be long before he's in the team.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting point actually you make about the right footers playing in the left 10 role, and the left footers playing maybe in the number 10 where Connor Chaplin's played, and also Hutchinson as well. Because as Sean was talking about in the Telegram group earlier, it's not necessarily just the fact that they can cut inside and have their shots. It's also for the pullbacks that they receive, isn't it? If you've got Leif Davis pulling it back to the penalty spot, you've got Connor Chaplin running onto it with his left foot, which is on the right side for him on his left, and similarly on the right-hand side with Burns pulling it back to someone on their right foot coming onto it to shoot from the edge of the box on their right, isn't it? So that does seem to be the way we set up.
And they are our main goal-scoring threat as well, the guys playing in behind. So last year, Connor Chaplin and Nathan Broadhead were our top goal scorers. The year before, Connor Chaplin was obviously our top goal scorer. Nathan Broadhead came in the second half of the season, scored a lot of goals from that position. And whoever plays in that role, they are the, like I say, we'll come on to it later when you're talking about strikers and their goal records and what they're expected to do. And we'll see that where we want the goal scorers to be is generally behind that main man.
Yeah. Do you see him making a start this weekend? Do you think he's been in the building on the grass long enough to get up to speed with where we're at? Or, albeit having just said that we prefer to have right footers playing that left 10, do you think Hutchinson might do it this week?
Yeah, I guess some of it will depend on Wes Burns' fitness levels and whether Amari Hutchinson is needed in that right-hand side role. But I don't think he'll be far off a start, but it doesn't sound like he's had much of a pre-season. Like, you can work hard on your own, but to get yourselves up to the levels, we're probably going to be looking the other side of the international break, really, aren't we? I guess the one thing working in his favour is that he's going to be cup-tied for the Wimbledon game on Tuesday, so he can start today and somebody else go into that one, or start on Saturday and someone else go into that one without needing to be... There's not I would give him 60 minutes in that game to work himself up. We can't. Yeah,
that's a bit of a shame, actually. That's a good point. Is that he's, as you say, he's cup tied, and for everyone, look for the club news on ticket information for the Wimbledon game. Obviously, it's week today, isn't it? We're Wednesday, aren't we? Yeah, so it's a week today. So I think there's like a dual points thing tomorrow. One at whatever time it is, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, another one at midday-ish. So yeah, have a look if you want Wimbledon tickets, because they've already released the point structure and the timings of it, and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, and you might get to see the likes of Calvin Phillips and the guy we're going to speak about in a second playing in that game, just to get some minutes under their belt. You never know. Just a quick one here from nobody's put this in. Basically saying that, similar to what Darren Cantney said about in doing it the hard way. He has played, I'll call it conference, National League football, and League Two and League One and Championship, hasn't he? You know, a lot of our guys having played lower league stuff. You know, he's done it the hard way, and he doesn't seem the kind of character that'll be phased by making the step up. Does he?
No, and he's earned his shot and been rewarded with it. But he scored goals at every level he's played at, and I think maybe his drive has sometimes pushed him into the wrong path. Sometimes, like it sounds like the move he took to Bristol City, he'd probably be better taking a smaller step at that point. And at Peterborough, Darren McAnthony was saying that he was going to, when they were in the Championship, he wanted to go on loan to League One because he wasn't playing with Carl Robinson. And it's like sometimes maybe he's sort of pushes to get too far ahead of himself. He's too driven, where sometimes maybe you need to sit back and take the slower route to where you need to get to. And it's all worked out brilliant for him now. He's now got a 4-year contract at a Premier League club.
Yeah, brilliant. And he's moved back, as we all know, as you referenced earlier about his Colchester roots. He's moved back, and it's an ideal move for him, isn't it? All in all. So yeah, let's hope, fingers crossed, he can get a decent run. As I say, he doesn't seem the kind of guy that's going to be phased by all of a sudden playing against Virgil van Dijk on a Saturday. He seems the kind of fella that's just going to give it his all regardless. And yeah, we may well find out.
Jamie Vardy's about him, hasn't he?
He has, hasn't he? Yeah. Hopefully he'll be pointing to the Premier League badge and taunting Tottenham fans this time next year. Okay, so that was signing whatever it was, number one, tail end of last week, and then I think Ben's probably covered. I was going to say covered Calvin Phillips. Yeah, I think given half the chance, he'd probably like to cover Calvin Phillips. Moving on, after the weekend, on Monday, Swedish international midfielder Jens Cajuste joined on. Good-looking fella, isn't he? Joined on, as is Joe. Good-looking fella, joined on loan from Napoli until the end of the season, with an obligation to buy, and we may hear that phrase again in a little while, an obligation to buy should Town not get relegated this season. And it looks like it's a decent, bloody hell, listen to us, a decent sized fee that's been negotiated should we get round to buying him at the end of the season. 25 years old, capped 23 times by Sweden, made 26 appearances for Napoli in Serie A last year, having signed for them from Rem, I believe, for 12 million euros. Won the Danish Super League, played Champions League with Midtjylland. Are we going for?
Yeah, I don't know where we're going to go with his first club though, because that's even more difficult.
I don't tend to go back that far, to be honest. But again, Joe, just like we did with Sami Smodic, he looks a specimen, doesn't he? If people can see the highlights reels, he looks like he's a bit of a marauder, likes to tackle. What do you think he's going to offer us, and where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, physicality first and foremost. He looks like a very physical player in there. Looks like he's got the ability to get up and down the pitch, can tackle, can pass the ball, can carry the ball. They seem to be his main strengths. He doesn't seem to be somebody who wants to get involved in sort of the scoring end of the pitch and scoring and setting up goals. He seems to be the guys that carries there. But again, sort of you signed a Swedish international from Napoli, it's a pretty big deal. But when you looked at the leaked dossier at the start of the season, it talked about wanting English-speaking players. You hear him talk; he sounds very American almost. Yeah. I think his father is an American from Haiti, or lived in Haiti, an American, and born in Sweden, lived there till he was 5, then moved to China for 5 or 6 years before moving back to Sweden and joining a team whose name begins with O that I can't possibly pronounce, before working his way up there. And so he did that, had 3.5 years at Midtjylland, then went to Rem for what was a club record fee, had 1.5 years there. Napoli, at the time, whilst they were Italian champions, bought him last season at the in between their Champions season last year for another 10 million euros. And he's been, I think he played 26 games for them last year. The vast majority were from the bench, but he did actually start the last 5 games of the season for them. So he wasn't just I know I wouldn't like to besmirch his name, but Sixto Peralta, back in the day, we signed him from Inter Milan, but I don't think he ever played a game for them. He was just one of their 55 members in their squad who was co-owned by someone. He is an actual out-and-out Napoli player who played for them last season whilst they were making a poor attempt to defend their Serie A title. But yeah, he's a real lot of pedigree in there. And just sort of someone you want to see out there, don't you? And when you look at what our midfield options were this time last week to what they are now, it's a huge step up. Now we were talking Sam Morsey, Massimo Luongo, Jack Taylor, and now it's Sam Morsey, England international from sort of one of England's best players 2 or 3 years ago, and a guy who's played 24 times for Sweden and has played for the Italian champions and had sort of 25 million quid's worth of transfer fees spent on him in the last sort of 3 seasons. So yeah, really, really big step up in the quality.
Isn't it fantastic being in the Premier League?
It does make things a lot easier, doesn't it? When you back in the day when you're trying to talk about signing Tom Carroll,
no disrespect,
and you having to get excited about these players because they've had a decent season in the Championship, and you're there where these guys are all household names,
pedigree, haven't they? As you said, they've got pedigree, haven't they? Just in terms of your points there, and also a lot of chat that we've had as well. Let's get up. Rich has very kindly put together a squad depth chart squad depth chart for us. Apologies for those who are listening, but it's obviously a graphic which shows the squad and the positions of the team and the numbers that we've got in those particular positions. And as I say, there's been a lot of chat in regards to that starting centre midfield pair. Really, I'll flash a few up if I can get to the top of them. But as you sort of say, here's one from Paul from Westy: Cajuste, Taylor, Morsey, Luongo, Phillips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, well done, Paul. You've managed to get the same 5 that Rich has got. Basically, who starts? Norman, Cajuste, 10 million. Phillips, 45 million. Surely they will be our starters. Where does that leave Morsey? Neil then's gone on to saying that Morsey will start and Cajuste can potentially do the number 10 role. What do you reckon, Joe? As you said, we were not scratching around, but we were looking at our first Premier League game with our Championship stroke League One centre midfield options. We've now upgraded those. Where do you see everyone fitting in?
Personally, my view is that we'll start mostly with Sam Morsey and Calvin Phillips will be our midfield 2, and that Cajuste will be the main sub who probably gets minutes in most games, in the same way that Jack Taylor got a lot of minutes off the bench last year, normally coming on for sort of 20, 25 minutes at the end. And I don't think we'll see a huge amount of Massimo, and I think we'll probably see even less of Jack Taylor over the last over the rest of the season, which is nearly the whole season, because unless there's injuries, he seems effectively he's going to be 5th choice in that pecking order for 2 positions. It might be that he moves up and plays in sort of a deeper 10 role. I think he played there a few times last year, sort of notably coming on against sort of Southampton, Bristol City in those games, and coming on and making a big difference in that role. But I just don't think he suits the way we want to play with those two at the back there. So yeah, for me, I don't see anyone getting Sam Morsey out of the team. Not easily anyway. Not until they've made a case, which is unquestionable. And I don't think Sam Morsey will allow them to do that.
No, well, that's a point here that Promotion Given has pointed out. Is basically saying that it will be picked on basis of form. Well, Sam Morsey doesn't tend to, didn't in League One and Championship, didn't tend to lose much form, did he? So, as you say, Joe, he'll certainly be there from the start, and it'll just be interesting to know. And very often you see these beginning of the season starting 11s and end of the season starting 11s, and just through the course of a season of football, they do tend to change and morph from one to another. But as I say, hopefully for those that can see, our centre midfield does now look a little bit stronger. Yeah, certainly a little bit stronger. Do you see any? Is it too stacked? Do you see anyone leaving before the 30th of August around 11 o'clock at night?
I think we had 5 central midfielders all through last season, didn't we? Even at the end of the season, we had sort of Lewis Travers and Dominic Ball as the 2 other options in there. So I imagine we will keep 5 around. But if someone told me someone has come in with a bid for Jack Taylor and we can turn a profit on him, I think I wouldn't be at all surprised if that happens. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack Taylor ends up on loan. I don't see Morsey going anywhere 100%. There's no chance he goes anywhere, and I don't see where Massimo would go this year. He's going to enjoy his season in the Premier League, picking up as many minutes as he can, as almost like a swan song to his sort of fantastic
and guaranteeing
career
playing in the cup games, isn't he? He'll be if not he'll be captain in the cup games if Morsey does fancy a rest.
Yeah, so I don't see any of the first four going anywhere. But Jack Taylor, I don't expect to leave, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does.
Just a quick one here from William. Is it possible we play three in the middle? Haven't done yet, have we?
No, and I think the only way three in the middle is played is maybe later in games where Jack Taylor plays high. Because I don't think admittedly, I've watched Cajuste on YouTube and a little bit of Y Scout that somebody sent me, so I can't claim to be an expert on his game, but he doesn't seem to be somebody that plays high up the pitch. And when you look at his goal scoring record, it's like 7 goals and 5 assists in 150 games. He's not somebody that gets involved in that side. He looks like someone that carries the ball from deep, where you need somebody getting up and down the pitch with a bit of goal threat if you're going to do that, because they do need to play more as a 10 than as a 6, which is what they'll be there. So I don't see it happening in the same way. I don't really see us going 3 at the back. I think we'll just work with personnel within the shape and system that we've played so successfully for the last couple of years.
Just a quick one here from Kjell Antonsson. Hi, Kjell. Saying that Morsey's too slow. Do you think that the Premier League's going to be a step too far for the captain?
No, I don't. I think he showed on Saturday that he can play in the Premier League. I don't think there was any real issues with his performance on Saturday, and that was against probably one of the best midfields we'll come up against this season. It might be that over the course of the season he doesn't have the legs for it, but when you look how lean he looks this year and how the shape he's come back in, I'd be very, very surprised if it's physically he doesn't cope with.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, that's the 2 that are confirmed in the door at the moment. We'll have a chat about the one that we're pretty confident is going to be signing at some point tomorrow, Thursday, if you're listening to us after the event. But just a quick break while we have a word from our sponsors at Wells. And also, we are brought to you in partnership with onestopbadges.co.uk.
Blue Monday is proudly brought to you in partnership with our friends at Atwell Solicitors, your ideal legal partner for work on property or business law. Their client care has repeatedly been recognised as outstanding, and they are people-focused with a plain English approach which sets them apart. They have offices in Ipswich, Colchester and London, and to find out more, head to atwells.com.
As Joe mentioned at the beginning, we have got a lot of shows. So I'll just give you a quick reminder of what we've got going on. So currently out there in the ether, there is the Rewind show. Dave and I chatted about a couple of Man City games in that one. Ben and Mikey have their Premier League predictions. I think that was released earlier today. So catch up on what they believe is going to happen at the weekend. No spoilers from me. Pre-match, as ever, live Thursday night, tomorrow night. That's with Mikey and Seb. Rich is having an evening off. And then, as ever, Flagship on Sunday. After the event, we'll chew the fat and pick the bones out of whatever will be against Manchester City. And as Joe said, Friday, there's a quick chat with Joe Sheehan in advance of the first league match for the women's team over the weekend. So hopefully you're up to speed with what we've been doing. We've all been pretty busy this week, so yeah, hopefully you can listen to watch all of those and enjoy. Armando Broja, Joe, was rumoured to have been joining us earlier in the transfer window, and now, as you say, Stuart Watson, I think, actually led on this one in terms of it coming to fruition. And it looks like it's going to happen at some point tomorrow. 6'3", born in Slough, of all places.
My kind of town.
Spurs and Chelsea as a kid. And as Chelsea tend to do, went on loan to Vitesse Arnhem, went on loan to Southampton, went on loan to Fulham. But I think we can sweep over the Fulham loan. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm having to not call him Armando Dobra all the time. Every time I type it out, I keep going with the wrong name there. So that's sort of my first issue with him. But it looks a real sort of monster of a signing, doesn't it? When you look at sort of the clubs he's been linked with over the sort of last 18 months. I think AC Milan, we're talking about trying to get him earlier in the window. He had a good Euro 2024 with Albania, and he's looks exactly the sort of striker that Kieran McKenna loves in his system. It's that real pace, really quick, sharp, quick, accelerates fast, just can run the channels all day. And when he gets the ball, he's technically excellent as well. That is his game. It's like I say, it just looks someone right up our street on that side. And I'd say that the talk of the deal is that it's a loan with an obligation to buy if we stay up. And the talk, it's difficult to find out the real info, but they say £30 million is a total deal. But then it talks about having to cover all his wages for this season, so that could be 4 to 5 million. That deal,
in it.
And then included in it, Chelsea. Like, we remember when we were buying Hutchinson off them, and there was talk about them wanting £35 million for him, and it'd be interesting to see what our local press report when the deal does actually go through, because I think at the moment the figures given are ones that Chelsea want out there as opposed to what we want out there, and we're quite happy to let them go that way if we get the deal. But I think he's someone that we've been interested in a long time, and maybe someone that was very high up on the list, but one where you think almost probably similar to Calvin Phillips last week, where he's someone we'd love, but we don't think there's any way we're going to get him done. And then when that opportunity comes up, just sort of flying into it, and all that groundwork we've laid, sort of conversations we've had with him and his team over the summer are coming to fruition when maybe we didn't expect them to.
Yeah. Well, and as you say, it's quite interesting about the obligation, as we say before. And as you say, Joe, we don't know that 30 million, or if that's a figure that's being brought out, how much of it is wages, how much of it is the loan fee that you pay regardless, just to have him here for the year, and then an additional fee on top, which you won't be paying in one lump sum anyway. You wouldn't suspect. But there was some chat in the Telegram earlier about obligations, because if we've agreed a fee of X million, 25, 30 million, if he plays 6 times and comes on a sub 6 times, maybe we don't actually want to be obliged to buy him if George Hurst and Rory, Liam, Delap have scored goals for fun in his stead. How do you get out of that deal? Should you have to? Do you think there's going to be clauses on both sides that allow us to, or all 3 sides really, player and 2 clubs?
You'd imagine there'd be something to do with a minimum amount of minutes or appearances that need to be played. But if you just take it on face value that it is a obligation, if we stay up, there's no way out of it for club or player, and he has the season that you talk about, I guess you just have to take that risk on some players, because if we stay up this season, somebody has stepped up and scored a lot of goals this year, whether it's Broja or Hurst or Delap or Chaplin or Hutchinson, whoever, and you've probably got somebody whose value has quadrupled in that time. So maybe Broja, you might buy him for 30 and he might be worth 15, and then you bought Delap for 15, but he might be worth 50 because he's got 18 goals in the Premier League this season. But for us to stay up, somebody has to have, well, not somebody, 4 or 5 players, especially in the attacking end, have to have had excellent seasons. So I think it's just the risk you take, isn't it? And I don't think it's as big a risk as people make out, because I doubt the fee will be as big as what it is. And from what I've seen of him, he looks excellent. Like he's obviously had a tough time with injuries since that Southampton loan spell, but the spell he had on loan at Southampton when he went into that season as a 19-year-old playing Premier League football, scored 8 or 9 goals that season for them, ran other teams ragged, and he's just very unfortunate. He went back, and I think it was during the World Cup, Chelsea were playing a behind closed doors friendly where he did his cruciate ligament. That effectively put him out into the start of last season, and he was a little bit stuck. And Chelsea are so badly managing themselves at the moment that you look at even this deal, when they're talking about a loan, they're pushing everything right back to the end of the window. When he signed for Fulham last season, he signed for them on February the 2nd at the very, very end of the window when they had about 14 games left, rather than actually making a move for him, which was good, get him out early in the window, give him a real actual chance of doing something. So I wouldn't say I'd discount it, but generally the year after your ACL, it's generally the following year when you're actually able to do a bit more from there. So I'm really, really excited about this one. I know it's a big fee. I know it's a risk, and like Rodney says there, has he lost some of his pace? I guess we're not going to know. I don't think the pace is what I'd worry about. It's more the durability and are you able to take the same endurance on the knee as opposed to not just tackles this, but are you able to do as many sprints and the like in a game? But I'm sure we've checked all this out and had thorough medicals, and I say I think people don't, because he's had that sort of bad spell at Fulham last year. I think people forget just how highly rated this guy was. There was talk of him like 50 million this time last year, and he was seen as one of the hottest young strikers in world football, not just in England or European football. He's a guy that's had a huge reputation for so long, and he's had a huge reputation from some of the stuff he's achieved in senior football, not just junior football. So it's an incredible signing, and one which is, let's say, if it comes off and he becomes the player he was at Southampton, one that we'll be looking back on with an absolute bargain hat on, and just praying that we stay up so we can keep hold of him for next year. That will be hopefully where we are in sort of a few months' time.
Yeah, it's exciting times, and it's exciting signing. And again, like we said about Cajuste and his highlights reel, just if people have got their doubts, just have a look at his highlights reel, because he don't take too much stock in opposition fans and Fulham fans saying is this, that, and the other. Just wait to see it with your own eyes. Just a little concern here from Sean about how invested is Broja in coming to Ipswich. Does he really want to join us, etc.? Wanted more options, but it's in everyone's best interest to just have him playing Premier League football and scoring goals, and then whatever will be at the end of it, won't it?
Yeah, and it's one of those things, because there was talk. I think we'd met with his advisors, his camp up in London last week. I'd been told sort of the middle of last week, and then the next day, I think that news broke, and then the next day there was effectively like Simon Johnson, Nizar Kinsella, who are the big sort of Chelsea beat writers across the Athletic and the papers, was like, Broja doesn't want to sign for Ipswich. He wants to go to a bigger club. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that is a message from his camp. That is them trying to flush out every bit of interest they've got. And then obviously coming at the end of all that, whatever interest they've got isn't as good as what we can offer him. And they're deciding that we are the best option for him. And I don't think as fans we can be too precious about what people want, which people want to play for us, because every single player, once they sign on that dotted line, wants to be here, wants to show themselves, and wants to move to the next stage of their career. And when you're doing it in the Premier League, you're let's say, if he's a £30 million striker in this league, getting paid probably 50, 60, 70,000 pound a week, he knows that if he can score 15 goals for us this year, he's going to be getting double that wage and going for a bigger transfer fee to one of Europe's biggest clubs if he can do it here for us. So there's, like I said, no players in our squad apart from probably Luke Wolfenden and Harry Clark dreamed of playing for Ipswich.
Careful, Joe.
Yeah, like we all did. Everyone watching this did, but like I say, Liam Delap's, he's just left Man City to come here, and you see his attitude and his application. And like I say, I'm sure he would have probably not wanted to drop down from Man City to Ipswich, but we're a fantastic option with a fantastic manager, a fantastic setup, and everything is built here now to succeed. And we're gonna sign some players that we're desperate for. We're gonna miss out on some players that we're desperate for. Some players who are desperate to sign for us over others will get. Some that maybe would rather sign somewhere else will still end up here. But once they're here, they will be contributing. It's not like, I don't know, like a workplace now. This is the absolute elite level of football now, the Premier League, and anyone in here knows they've got to be fully at it to go further in their career.
Well, that's it. And if you all only want players who are desperate to sign for Ipswich, they're going to be players who are in the lower leagues wanting a shot at the Premier League, aren't they? People like Sammy Smodic. Yeah. If we want to sign relatively elite players, this is all relative, everyone. I'm not saying Broy is an elite player, but relatively elite players, they're going to be dropping down. As Joe said, Delap's dropping down to make a fist of it, to hopefully see his career go through the roof. And then if it does, then it's only going to be of a benefit to us as well. A quick question for me, Joe. Why is Armando Broja worth upwards of £30 million and George Hurst was purchased for £1.5 million? What constitutes why? Where does the valuation appear from?
I think George Hurst was massively undervalued when we signed him. I think that was just when you looked at the other deals that were done in that window, even if you look at Leicester alone, who sold George Hurst at 1.5 million and replaced him with Tom Cannon for 7 million. It just baffles belief. But I guess George Hurst hadn't scored any goals in the Championship, so he'd been seen he was a flop at the Championship level, where we'd had him in the building and knew that he had the capabilities to go up through the levels, even into the Premier League. I think he's one, which is very unfortunately missing, that the club think is one that could really excel in the Premier League. So, and I think that Liam Delap, maybe at 15 million, is one who could be seen as another bargain come this time next year when you look at how he played at the weekend and what he did to Jarrell Kwanzaa in that first half. So it's just, football finances are an incredibly funny thing and a difficult thing. And you look at, even if you look at Cajuste, he's a international and he's 10 million euros, where if you'd have tried to sign a guy from the Championship in that similar position, so someone like Hayden Hackney, for example, who's got nothing like the career he's had, they'd probably want double. They'd probably want double that. And Coventry did want double that for Ben Sheaf, and you look at it, and it's just really, really difficult to put rhyme nor reason to it. But I think, like I say, it's that big club. That big club
tax
upbringing.
As well.
He's an international, sort of a international who's played at major tournaments now. He's still young and he's got that physical talent that is Premier League quality. And once you show you've got that, that's really where the money is. And someone like Ali Al-Hamadi has shown he's got that, and he could be somebody that his value just goes straight up if he. Like I say, if he went on loan to the Championship next season, because he's probably not going to play a huge amount for us, and he went to Watford and scored
12 goals,
13 goals, he's probably worth 10 times what we paid for him straight away. So it is just finding these guys who have got that pure physicality, and obviously you've got to be a good technical player as well. But in the Premier League, as we saw at the weekend, the physical levels are just off the scale.
Can you allay Leon's fears here about FFP or profit and sustainability rules in terms of the outlays that we're paying? Obviously, we won't be paying all of these lump sums up front. They'll be spread across, as Chelsea have been want to do, spread across years. Maybe not as many years as they're doing it, but we'll be fine, won't we, Joe?
Yeah, and I can't allay the fears because I don't know the details. But when you look at our accounts last season, we even put in there what our FFP calculations were. So it's something obviously the club is working very, very closely with. It's not something we're risking and getting to the end of a window and having to do X or Y to get there, and having these deals that were being done on June the 30th where young players were being transferred for 15 million quid each just to clear teams' books. It's something we're working on all the time and we're ready for.
While we're looking at, I'll pop the squad depth chart up again, just so we can look at the striker situation where we find ourselves right now. And while we do that, just in terms of, while we get excited about the fact we just signed another 6 foot plus 6'3" striker with a decent amount of pace on him that can stretch defenses, etc., etc. Now we've got him, Delap, and eventually George Hurst ready to play up front for us, where do you see their roles being? Do you think that they're all going to combine playing the same role as that central striker? Do you see, Delap and Hurst as more of a physical threat from a stature and size perspective, more, no disrespect, meaning battering rams, but more of a physical aspect, and Broja is more of a technical player in that role?
I think it's just the pace to be able to get in behind and come short, which all of them have now. So I think something that we could say happened later in the season is that Delap plays on the right wing where Wes Burns has played, because he's played in that position a lot for Hull, but he's also got that extra level of sort of quality really compared to Wes Burns. But Wes Burns is just so attuned to our system that buys him a huge amount of sort of extra starts and that quality, and he's going to be really, really difficult to dislodge from that position. But he went down with a hamstring injury on Saturday, and I think if he was to have a sustained period at the team and all our striking options are here and fit, I'd imagine that Delap could be seen in that role, and you go with sort of Broja and Hurst, or Broja and Hurst as your main strikers rotating, and just a bit of juggling around behind them. But yeah, there's some serious options in that squad now, isn't there? And the upgrade that we've had from this time last year is almost complete.
Well, yes, we'll come on to that as the final bit of our chat tonight is about any potential gaps. People have been asking in the chat about any potential gaps. But so in terms of that front four, let's take the front four as a block. We think we're now pretty much sorted for that central striker. In terms of the two guys there, one you've already spoken about, Ali Al-Hamidi. You foresee him going out on loan, hopefully to the Championship. What about our dear old friend Freddie? What's going to happen with Fred?
I think Mutual Consent FC may beckon for Freddie Ladapo, and I'm sure he'll have a nice payoff for it, because of the double promotion will have pushed his wages up a huge amount. But he played a huge part in getting us out of League One, so I don't think anyone can begrudge him that. It's just what happens, isn't it, when you stay here for a bit longer? But he was, because I was down at the ground early on Saturday, so I thought he'd be involved, because he came down in his tracksuit and parked up in the car park and then jumped in a taxi, presumably to take him to the training ground to come down on the coach with the rest of the team. And so he seemed to be involved, but he wasn't actually in the 20-man squad there. So I think the writing is on the wall for him, but it's been on the wall for him since last January, to be fair. So it's no great surprise, but yeah, I'm sure he'll leave, and he's been a good player for us in what he's done. He scored 21 goals in the League One season, made some decent contributions in the Championship, including sort of most notably the brace against Cardiff when he came off the bench to win the game for us. But yeah, we've just far exceeded his ability level with our growth, and I'm sure he'll be having a number of clubs trying to sign him.
Yeah, good luck to him. In terms of the graphic here, obviously Richard's symmetrically put in our asymmetrical formation there, and obviously the left-hand side's a little bit misleading in terms of Broadhead, Harness, Smodic being at the left. But obviously, they're not. They're left-sided 10, if you like. To the point here where Trevor has pointed out that Smodic's best position is a 10, not wide left. I think our left-sided number 10 isn't wide at all, is he, Joe? That's done by the guy with the number 3 on his back. Yep. Similar here, Aaron's pointed out exactly that point, is that that number 10 doesn't play wide. They play through the centre in the main. What do we think in terms of, obviously Burns? We are still looking, as far as we're aware, for a left-sided player, aren't we, Joe? We still do see as you've mentioned before, more of a ball carrier in that position. There does seem to be some rumours still dotted around. One from Neil, tugging at your heartstrings, Joe. The number 21 is still free. Do you see that being filled by a previous incumbent?
I would love for it to happen, but it does seem that if we were going to be signing Sarmiento, we'd have probably heard about it by now. And I put in the Telegram last night, there's sort of two reasons why it could not be. One is that it might be that Brighton don't want to deal with this over sort of what happened with Kieran McKenna at the start of the summer. I guess that's probably most unlikely of the scenarios. And secondly, we've had him in the building, and for whatever reason, character, ability, potential, learning, we'll never know. But he's not seen as one that suits us. But for me, I just think he'd be a perfect player to have in there as another finisher, a guy that comes off the bench and just causes a bit of chaos, but also works hard. When you look at the two games last season, right at the very end of the season, Hull and Coventry away, he came on and was a superb sub in both those games and really, really made a big difference. He's gone away with Ecuador in the summer, had a good Copa America scored in that. Scored a few guys for Brighton in pre-season, but there was talk from Alan Nixon on his Patreon last night that I think it was Burnley and Sheffield, or was it Sheffield United and Burnley that
I
were
think so, wasn't it?
linked with him on loan and maybe a
teams,
£6 to £7 million fee. But for me, I know we've been linked with obviously Jadon Philogene in that left-hand role. There's been a loose link to Jack Clark, but not a huge amount about that. It was quite a heavy link at one point, but it just seemed to dwindle away. But if it's a big fee for Clark, is that what we're going to do? Or I don't know, if Clark's 20 odd million, would you sign him or Sarmiento for 6 or 7? It's a difficult one to tell, but I think that Clark I think there's quite a big sell-on fee with Tottenham in there, so Sunderland want a lot of money for him. And when you look at how they start the season, 2 big sort of thumping wins to start the season, do they just try and hold on to him because they actually think this could be a year where we do something here? So that could be a difficult deal to do. And
good evening to you, David. Just a quick one. Thank you very, very much for your donation to us. We'll put it in the pot towards our profit and sustainability rules that we have to abide by here. But thank you very, very much as ever for your support for the pod. There's a lot of people. I just showed our faces so people can see that we're still here and aren't like disappearing to other parts of the house while the graphics still on. But I'm going to pop it back up because there are a lot of chat, a lot of questions about any potential gaps that we still see. Really, here's one from Westy. Assuming Broja joins, is that our business done? Obviously, we just spoke about potentially a left winger stroke dribbler. Are we still looking for a centre back? He asks.
Well, it sounds like we are, doesn't it? Because the sort of 2 bigger links we've had in the national press is Dara O'Shea, and in the local press is Anel Ahmed Hodzic. I assume that's how you pronounce it.
I left you to that one.
Trying on that one. I haven't, unlike Armando Broja, I haven't watched the video of him telling me how to do it yet. So but it does seem that we are targeting a right-sided centre-back, which you'd imagine is somebody's play with Jacob Greaves.
And is that for a pace reason? What would be the reason we would be looking for another right-sided centre-back and on top of the 2 that we've got there on the screen, Edmondson and Wolfenden?
But I guess because you just are trying to upgrade every position in the squad where you can, isn't it? And now is the time to do it. And if we want to stay up, probably nearly every position does need an upgrade. And I thought Wolfie did really well on Saturday. He got booked very, very early, which made his game a lot harder. But if Kieran McKenna sees Ahmed Hodzic or O'Shea as a better bet for him in the Premier League, then you do it, don't you? Like I said, I spoke a few podcasts ago that the only free or sort of 2/free players from last season who I thought would definitely start for us this season with Leif Davis, Sam Morsey, and if we signed him, Amari Hutchinson. They were the 3, for me, players that were a level above anything else in the team at the end of last season, and it does seem to have played out like that.
Just a quick one here. And this will link into just the final chat about a specific player we'll have. Norman's asked which players will leave this window and what transfer fees could we expect. I think you've spoken, Joe, haven't you, about potentially Taylor going. I suppose there's Marcus Harness has been mentioned. It will be, as you've spoken about many times previously, it will be those players who were fringe stroke sub players last season who will inevitably drop down a strata to the next level when people like Calvin Phillips wander through the door, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can go for it by position. And I think at the goalkeeper position, we're very set. But Slicker, I think they'd like to get him out on loan if they could. And maybe Walton would like to go and start games somewhere else if he could. But I guess Saturday makes that slightly more unlikely. But if either of those go out, you just replace them. Centre-backs, Edmondson seems a player who's most at risk because he's, not playing, not getting in a match day 20, and Wolfenden's ahead of him, and it sounds like we're trying to sign somebody else for that position. Right back, we're pretty set there. Left back, we're set there. Central midfield, we've mentioned it earlier about Jack Taylor, so nothing really further to add on that. And then the guys behind the striker, Marcus Harness is the one who was not even getting in the match day 20 for the back end of last season. Yeah, he's had a good pre-season, but if you sign Jack Clark, and he goes in there with Nathan Broadhead, Sammy Smodics, Amari Hutchinson, Connor Chaplin, Wes Burns, and potentially Liam Delap in those roles behind the striker. He's not going to play many games of football, so maybe he's one that ends up heading out somewhere as well. And then Ali Al-Hamidi.
Yeah. As we've spoken about before, getting a decent line in the Championship. As we say about people leaving, quick one here. Cameron Humphreys has joined Wycombe Wanderers for the season, with obviously a potential clawback in January should we need to. No great surprise. He's headed to Wycombe, Joe, with the current manager and head of recruitment having very, very strong links with Ipswich, and obviously know Cameron very, very well. I suppose the only concern there is similarly to Elkan Baggott, who's joined Blackpool and then found that his manager's got the sack moment of days later. Wycombe haven't got off to the most stupendous of starts. I don't think they've got a point yet, have they? So you just got to hope that he can get some games under his belt, and that he'll be, I say, just played in his rightful position and can take a few games by the scruff of the neck. It's what he needs to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think Wycombe had a good end to the season last year. I guess what is difficult there is you never know how these things go at these smaller clubs, where you don't know what their expectations are for the year. You don't know how sort of itchy the owners' trigger fingers are. But you'd hope Matt Bloomfield gets a good run there, as he's sort of a club legend. So goes from there. But yeah, good to see it's his first loan spell. He's still only 20, Cameron Humphreys, but he's played a good amount of football for a very good side. So it's we'll see what he does there. I saw Sam Morsey tweeted after the move was announced, just quote tweeted the club once saying, "Wycombe are very, very lucky. Expected Championship teams to be all over this. Good luck, Cam." So that's a guy who knows his football, who knows all about Cam Humphreys, and he's put that out there. I know Peterborough were very, very strongly in for him as well, who are another good League One side. So I guess he could have gone to the Championship, but do you go to the Championship and end up having a year similar to what you did last year, where you maybe don't play a huge amount, or do you go to League One, start every game and get sort of 30, 40 games under your belt and come back a better player? But he's one I'm really, really excited to see how he does, because I think he's one that could come on so quickly, as he has done when he played for us previously.
Yeah. Westy, just a quick question. Is there a maximum number of loans we can play in a match? Or in a match, also in a match day squad, I suppose is more relevant. How many you can have in a match day squad?
I think that it's 5. You're only allowed 2 Premier League loans, which we will now have filled with Calvin Phillips and Armando Broja, and that is non-negotiable. But I think you can have up to 5 loanees in your squad, because you can have as many international loans as you want. And last year, Burnley had 4, and 1 domestic and 4 international loans, and they were played them all regularly. So there isn't anything for us to worry about that.
Brilliant. Right, I'm going to finish on a couple of points here, but I just want to say thank you very, very much to everyone who's joined us in the chat. It's been absolutely fantastic. As I say, considering we went live pretty last minute once we'd rounded up. Myself and Joe get a bit overexcited by transfers and got Rich to sort out the logistics of it all. Thanks very much for Rich for doing that. Hope you've appreciated the fact that we've now put something out. As I said before, pre-match will be tomorrow night, and then Rich's Joe Sheehan interview Friday, and then the flagship on Sunday evening. Just a quick one here from Matt. Having Kieran McKenna is such a factor in a lot of our recruits. They do all seem to mention it. He's our biggest signing in the last 20 plus years. Very, very possibly, Matt. And finally, Dare Crosby, whatever happens, and I don't think anybody can argue with this one at the moment, regardless of what you think about the players that we're signing and whether they're going to be able to do what we hope that they can, we're certainly giving ourselves the best chance of staying up. We could never dream of this scenario a couple of years ago. And so say all of us, I think. Thank you very much for watching Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. I say, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Friday. We'll see you Sunday. Cheers.